it's hard to start.
That's certainly difficult. I have no idea.
That's not so much an issue for me.
I think the best answer that I have is
just to show them the beautiful part of cryptography.
Giving interesting courses
in your undergrad courses.
How can you leverage their strengths?
So in some sense, like just to show them the beautiful part of cryptography, and after they get interested, they will be, interested in the research topic, and then at that moment you give them enough patience and help, then help them to start. It will be very good, helpful.
Yeah. So so I think my case is also a really special case. Certainly very different from junior faculty studying in the US universities. Again, since I'm a research student still that cannot offer degree, so students, so I just have a post of a job opening, like the research assistantship job opening, constantly on my webpage and also on the institute's webpage. So somehow, I think somewhat luckily, they come naturally, and also from a quite diverse background. So many of them actually come from physics background, some come from math background, and some from EE, and the CS background is actually somewhat a minority for my group. Yeah. Yeah. So my guess is that the theory community is relatively small in Taiwan, and so if a student want to pursue theory research in their PhD, they may not have many good opportunities, say after they graduate from undergrad or graduate from master. So maybe academic clinica is the only place for them to kind of try to do theory research and prepare for applying for PhD. Yeah, so I think there are kind of quite a few students come every year, and they are typically highly motivated, and some will stay. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, there are shortcomings for sure. If I have, typically when the faculty have a PhD student for 5 years, it's a sufficiently long period for them to work on a certain maybe research topic or research direction for a longer time, and then to develop in more depth about the kind of the research in this direction. So for me, then I don't have this kind of opportunity. Students usually come, and when they are successful, they usually write maybe one paper with me when they are in my group, and then they will start their PhD in some other places. So that would kind of prevent me from working on something deeper and for longer with the student. But I think that's not so much an issue for me, because I kind of my own research interest or style is also quite kind of diverse. I like to maybe work on different topic when I have a new idea, rather than diving deep into a topic and work on it for many years. So this is less the issue for me.
This is really tough. I have no idea. I was hoping maybe you can tell me. I'm just starting, so I think this is all really unknown for me. I think the one thing that has been true in research collaborations, and also I've been kind of thinking about as I talk to PhD students, prospective students who may come or may not come, is just making sure that that there's a good match of advisor to student. We like we like the same kinds of problems. We enjoy talking to each other about technical things. And I feel like, yeah, again, focusing on the people and not worrying about, oh, what did this person do in the past? Which classes did they take? What were their grades? This doesn't matter so much to me as much as just, does it seem like this is the kind of person that I'd like to work with and who would like to work with me? Yeah, but in terms of building a group, I mean, yeah, I guess the other thing is just as an advisor, I've been trying to kind of, and I'm not sure how successful I've been at this, but just trying to make sure that people are kind of getting exposed to good ideas, you know, just so that there's kind of a soup that's full with interesting ideas, and that people are going to other people's talks and learning about other areas of computer science with the hope that eventually kind of research will come out of this.
Yeah, I mean, in my personal case, I was quite lucky that basically the moment I started my group, I already got a lot of actually unsolicited applications from students, but a few really stood out, right? Like a few were really personalized. You could tell they were not mass mails. They were, my name wasn't copy pasted in there or anything. They really read and understood my work, and of those I invited some for interviews. This was still pre-corona. There I could actually have in-person interviews. I invited them to visit my group, which back then was just me, and talked to them. And yeah, and I hired one student from this group of people. Now I have 2 or 3 more students who are actually locals. So one of, or both of them actually took courses that I gave and were very interested, and of course ask really cool questions during my classes. And those are the people you wanna look out for. Those are potential future PhD students in your undergrad courses. And what I personally think the advantage of joining a more junior group, a smaller group, is that there's much closer interaction with your advisor than when you're working with someone super senior who has like several layers of hierarchy, where you just maybe get to work with a postdoc who's going to be somewhere else in 1 or 2 years. So I mean, everything comes with its pros and cons, right? So when you're working with a more junior advisor, then of course maybe their standing in the community is not as immense as someone more senior, but you will probably have a lot more interaction, a lot more close advising than if your advisor is a super senior person.
I think that it's useful to find students and other people that you collaborate with a perspective of you know, how can you leverage their strengths and use your strengths to contribute to their hopefully complementary strengths and prepare them for independent research, right? So I think that all students, as long as they have motivation and they're reasonably smart, which many of them are, with the right sort of encouragement and so on, can do quite well. So obviously, I mean, this is at Berkeley, it's really always true. But I would expect that, if you encounter students who seem to be motivated, I think with a bit of an encouragement, they can go pretty far. Often, when working with students, I've seen a more of the opposite perspective sometimes that people have, which is of where they're not happy with the performance of a student or things like that. I think that that actually feeds into the students being less productive in the future. So if a student is working, is motivated, working hard, positive encouragement can go a long way in them moving forward. And in terms of building a research group, I think it's very useful to try to get a few people together. And once you have a critical mass and people communicate with each other, it can make the group far more lively and the research more fun for people. So I think that in terms of building a research group, it's useful to have a few students. And if maybe one student is lagging behind, the other students are often going to take up the charge of helping that person, and because it's all a team. So yeah,
that's tough. At the beginning, I mean, when you start a group from scratch, it's very hard. For quite a few years, I didn't have any students. I think the best thing would be to have to extend your networking with other researchers. So, for instance, they can send their students as visitors to visit your lab. And maybe one of these students is only doing a master and is he or she interested in PhD, then they might take your lab as a good option for their studies. And it's also very good to have, I mean, you can have networking in different levels. It's very recommended to have like a close circle of, let's say, a couple of very, very good, I would say, friends, researchers that you collaborate and work together, because that helps a lot. Sometimes one of your collaborator gets an application from a student, and for instance, this researcher doesn't have funding, so he or she may send that student to you. So it's hard to start. I know it's very, very hard to start, and you really need one or two good students to start, and then it's much easier because students ask other students and they talk, and then it's easier. So you really need the exposure in that sense.
On this question, this is one of the questions that is very different from country to country. I mean, at least in our university, I mean, students register to graduate studies, to the department. It's not that you need personally to attract them, and also because of language issues, it's relatively difficult to get students from other countries or so on. So basically, it is mostly based on giving interesting courses to the students who already decided to come to the university. Try to convince them that whatever you do is interesting, is attractive. I don't know, maybe convince them that you are nice, that it will be fun to work with you. I don't know, things like that. But it's less, it's not that we need to be in touch with students from other countries and try to convince them to come or so on. The way that things work is very different. Most of our graduate students also did their undergrad in the same university. I would say that, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of our graduate students did their undergrad in the same place. So you don't need to invest too much time in bringing students from the outside to your university. what you need to do is to try to convince the students that are already in the university that you are the person that they should come do research with. And this is mostly based on, you know, the classes that you give, and, you know.
I've been asked this question a few times, and I think the best answer that I have is a few students who I'm currently supervising, when they were master students, they did some projects with me. In Nijmegen, where I still have a professorship, we have a research internship where we have a master's thesis, of course, bachelor's thesis. And then I tell them to write this up and submit to some conference, or I make sure that they get to travel as part of their experience. If, you know, it's not always possible, but sometimes it turns out to be possible. So one of my PhD students actually turned his research internship into a paper at Latin Crypt and presented it in Cuba. And another of my PhD students did his research internship 3 weeks in Taiwan. So I think they had a good time, and they realized that doing a PhD with me maybe means continuing having a good time. So I think that kind of worked. Aside from that, talk to people at conferences, figure out who you would, well, I would like to work with potentially. So when it comes to at least hiring postdocs, comes to hiring PhD students, sometimes people contact me, and then, well, sometimes I have an open position. Quite often I don't, right? And then I try to talk to other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, this is actually something when masters, well, people who just finished their masters are looking for PhD positions, and they talk to multiple different, well, possible supervisors and their students. A question to ask is how much people get to travel if they want. So I think, for me at least, this was a very attractive part of doing my PhD, that I got to travel, that I got to meet people, that I got to have this direct scientific exchange with people from all over the world. I find this is one of the most exciting aspects of our work. And while some students you see at lots of conferences, and some other students you basically never see at conferences. That's not always it's of course, if that's your choice as a student, you say, I don't want to travel for whatever reason, that's fine. But having the possibility to do so, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's certainly difficult, especially in the beginning. Actually, my first student was already a student in the department before I came. She was working with a different advisor and took a class in cryptography and became fascinated in it and decided to to do cryptography. So that's definitely one avenue. I had a hard time, especially in the very beginning, finding PhD students. And one way I got around that is that instead of having PhD students, so other than this one student that switched, I had a hard time finding others. So instead of having many PhD students, I had a lot of visitors, and that in some way compensated. So there were a lot of people who were interested in visiting for a semester or even a year, usually PhD students. And it was great because they were already students that have already done some research. They were usually like in their 3rd or 4th year. So they already had some experience, and it was a lot of fun working with them. So it might not be as satisfying as having your own PhD student from the beginning, but yeah, especially if you have trouble attracting PhD students, this is one way to sort of compensate for that.